One. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a live episode of the Fifth Dimension live video podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Matthew J. Haas, and my other co-host with me is Mr. Dave Schumacher. What's up, Dave? We almost had no show due to the technical error on YouTube part.
Hey Matt, I'm glad we made it. It looks like YouTube was having some outages on the East Coast.
Yeah. So, but we're live. We made it. So I was kind of worried not having a show, but we're here. So, those who do podcasts and radio, understand that sometimes it's out of our hands. So, yeah, there were some outages. So thankfully we're live and we're up and running. So, hopefully everybody can hear us okay. Just to get business out of the way, if you'd like to, hang out with us in the chat room, there is a chat room. It's not much, it's not fancy, but it is there. If you go to our YouTube channel, next to the video feed, there's a little chat room box in the right hand side of the video. You can chat with us during the show that way. Please subscribe to our show by clicking that little bell at the top right screen of our YouTube channel. You can, communicate with us through there. You can also download, I believe there's a YouTube app. I was told you can also communicate in the chat room through the YouTube app as well. I've not gone down that route at all yet, so I can't really help anybody as far as that goes. But if you have the app and it works great, use it. If it's better that way, then go ahead. Our email is fifth dimension radio show at gmail.com. Again, it's fifth dimension radio show at gmail.com. So we have an interesting topic tonight. Dave and I came up with, key players and literature that has impacted the paranormal field over the decades. Let's just face it, the paranormal has been around for many, many years. It's global. It's a global phenomena. It's all over the world. There's lots of key players that have impacted the paranormal community over the years, over the decades, because there's literature and people that go way back, way early, even into the early 1800s. Dave could vouch for that because he's got probably a really great list that dates really far back. So,
It goes back.
yeah. We both have some notes and some lists of our own stuff, and I'm sure we'll go over everything. But so yeah, that's our topic for tonight. Key players and literature that have impacted the paranormal community and paranormal field over the decades. So if we've missed anyone, feel free to comment. Leave a comment on our episode or in the chat room if you wish. If we've forgotten anybody, feel free. If you like the list we have, give us feedback. Let us know if you enjoy who we talk about. So, if we make some good points or bad points, let us know. All right, Dave, I'll give you the first shot at it. Again, before the show, I told Dave I'm sure some of our lists are probably the same. We may have some of the same people, or who knows, we may surprise each other. So, Dave, I'll give you the first shot.
Well, I'm going to start off with organizations and then list a couple of the individuals. So the very first person I'll mention right out of the gate is Elliot O'Donnell. Lived from 1872 to 1965, and that was actually the first person to refer to himself as a ghost hunter. And he spent 50 years investigating ghosts and hauntings. Then, of course, there was Harry Price from 1881 to 1948. He founded the National Lab of Psychical Research. And then he also brought life into the Ghost Club, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, a little bit more. He also tried to introduce scientific methodology, and his big book was Confessions of a Ghost Hunter in 1936. And then really post 1945, a lot of amateurs took over. Peter Underwood, 1923 to 2014 is when he was alive, 40 books. He was also a member of the Ghost Club, and he really pushed for very little equipment. Andrew Green from 1927 to 2004. And now I'm just going to list a couple societies, then I'll shoot it over to you.
Okay.
The Ghost Club was founded in 1862. Charles Charles Dickens, Henry Sedgwick was part of that group, the Society for Psychical Research in 1882.
I actually have
The
that on my
Journal,
list.
there you go. The
Nice.
Journal of the Society of Psychical Research, the American Society for Psychical Research in 1884, William James, Charles Sedgwick, Gardner Murphy, the Journal of the American Society of Psychical Research, the Parapsychology Foundation, which was founded in 1951. Eileen Garrett was a member of that. They have the International Journal of Parapsychology. And then we have the Parapsychological Association that was founded in 1957, which publishes the Journal of Parapsychology. And then one that some people might not be aware of, and I was actually aware of it, but I didn't know they've been around this long, the Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena in 1981. So there's my first group of people. That's going way back, into some pretty going way back into this the history of it. But that's it. So I'll turn it over to Matt.
Okay, we do have somebody in the chat room. We actually have this is Jennifer Schumacher's in the chat room, so I want to give a quick mention to
Yep,
her, who's
Sir
she,
Sir
Sir
Arthur
Arthur.
Conan Doyle.
Yeah, she said don't forget about him.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's one of the oldies but goldies.
right.
All right. So
I have to
Matt, what do
turn
you
my.
got?
All right, so I gotta turn my flashlight on here, because I have a really dark armoire where my laptop is. So to read my notes, I need light. Let's shed some light on this. Okay. All right. I have Mr. Charles Fort, a huge collector of paranormal anecdotes, and he was a big contributor to the Scientific Journal. And he was actually, this is he was credited for coining the term poltergeist events and crop circles by Mr. Charles Fort, which is also dates back to the, I believe, mid 1800s era. I'm not sure exactly how far back Charles Fort goes, but I read a little history with him. So Dave, I'm sure you've heard of Charles Fort, yes?
Yep, that was a good one.
Yep. hmm Did I surprise you
Good.
with that one?
Nah, hey, you did some of
Yeah.
your
All right.
research. That's good.
I'm doing my homework. All right. Another one I think you'll like, and I'm a big fan of. Actually, we did have had the great honor of interviewing on our on another show that I used to host a couple of years back. We had the great pleasure of interviewing Sally Ryan Feathers, who was the daughter, I believe, of J.B. Ryan, uh, who he founded the parapsychology department at Duke University. Then they separated into their own institution, which is now known as the J.B. Ryan Institute. And he's got lots of books out there on extrasensory perception. He's got a lot of work uh, in ESP research, and one of his major books is Frontier Science of the Mind. I'm a big fan of the J.B. Ryan Institute because they have a lot of great ones on there about parapsychology and a lot of their ESP work that they get
Mm-hmm.
into. So that was one of the most. If you could find that episode on the show I used to run, Paranormal Talk Radio, might still be floating out there. But it was a great interview that we did with Sally Ryan Feathers and some of her colleagues that actually still work out of the Ryan Institute. Um, so going back, again, another big name I have is Michael Persinger. He was a professor
Yep.
of psychology at, if I have this correct, if I have it wrong, please recorrect me. Not sure how to pronounce the university he went to, but Laurentian University. Do I have that correct?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. um, he was a major mediator of parapsychology, and he had a heavy study of EMF on biological organisms. He himself also has 500 over 500 published, scientific journals out there. So,
Wow.
he also is very notable for the God helmet, which we all know about the God helmet. The idea behind the God helmet was they put a helmet on somebody and they tried to create a supernatural, uh, I guess, feeling, or try to make somebody feel like they're having a supernatural experience wearing the helmet. So that's a few people that I have on my list so far. I have a few more, but I'll turn it back over to Dave. Dave, how'd I do so far?
It's a good start. Good start. The I'm gonna build a little bit on uh, Sally Feather Ryan. Her mom and dad, J.B. Ryan, Joseph Banks Ryan, and Louisa Ryan, they founded the Duke Parapsychology program and department back in the 60s, I believe it
Yep.
was.
Yep.
But Louisa Ryan, she actually did a lot of work collecting reports of spontaneous cases, so ghosts and hauntings, as well as ESP and things like precognition, telepathy, telepathic dreams. So she collected quite a number of cases on that, and a lot of those were published in the Journal of Parapsychology. So I'd add to that a little bit. You hit Michael Persinger. That was a good one. I'd also like to add William Roll, who
Oh, yes.
was
Hmm.
Dr. William Roll, which was really critical in developing the data and the reports for poltergeists, or what they call recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. And he is actually the one that came up with that terminology, the recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. So he's one I'd add in there. And I'm just taking a look at the list. Some of the older ones, again, I'm going to finish up the real old ones, which would be Frederick Myers, uh, Edmund Gurney,
Not
and
not
Henry
Michael not
Sedgwick.
Michael Myers, Frederick Myers.
Not Michael Myers, Frederick Myers. And I'll have some books I'll want to talk about that these people have published that are really, to me, very instrumental. And anybody who has a serious interest in the field should pick them up and read them if they hadn't already. So the last one I'll just end with right now is Gertrude Schmeidler. She is probably the first female ghost hunter. She was more of a psychologist, parapsychologist, that her work was instrumental in, again, collecting cases and publishing them, some of the original works. So that's it for the old ones. I touched on one or two modern ones, but I'll toss it back to you, Matt, for some others.
Okay. Well, I think you had one of mine on your list already. Earlier you had mentioned ASPR, the American Society for Physical Research. I have that on here on my list, which was founded by William Fletcher Barrett, who was really into the study of telepathy, abnormal psychology. They studied mediums and kinetic phenomena. And then I also believe on my list, which is also on your list, I on my list was the Parapsychology Association, which formed in 1957, which they have really great publications, which can be found in the Journal of Parapsychology and Journal of the American Society for Physical Research, which I believe you kind of touched on that already.
Yep.
Um, so moving forward in the timeline, I guess, you know, whether people agree or not, whether you like them or not, they had a big following in the late 70s, early 80s. People who have really impacted the paranormal community and the field as a whole, both on TV and off TV. Ed and Lorraine Warren. You got the Warrens, who founded the New England for Society Psych Research, which was actually founded in 1952. So it goes back a ways. So that's another reason why I wanted to throw them in there, because they've been around a while. I don't think people realize how much far back they go. And they're very notable for the famous cases of the Annabelle doll, and the Perron family in the 70s, and of course their nephew, who is known as John Zaffis, um, who's the well-known demonologist that's been on TV and whatnot, haunted collector and so forth. But I just wanted to throw them in there just because again, they go far back. So since we're doing like timelines and stuff like that, another person who I might actually surprise Dave with, if I'm going too fast, stop me. Um, is Mr. Dr. Hans Holzer. which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. Claimed to have a PhD from the London College of Applied Science. He taught parapsychology at the New York Institute of Technology in New York City. Very notable for kind of believe it or not, he did have an investigation at the famous, iconic Amityville Horror House. He brought a psychic into the Amityville house. There's not really much publication on their work there. There's just like, which is kind of very controversial, as we all know. Everything that surrounds the Amityville house is very controversial. But the
Yeah,
reason
it's
I'm telling,
hard to weed through what's rubbish and what isn't.
yeah, exactly. I didn't want to really touch too much on the Amityville Horror because that could be a whole nother show. But he's notable for over 120 books, and one of his books is actually called Psychic Photography, which is more on the study of people who are psychic and they psychics were involved in photography, so they would take pictures while they were doing their psychic research, and so it was a different part of spirit photography, not just like ghost hunters just going around with a camera. It was more of a study of people with psychic abilities. So,
Hmm.
how'd I do?
Good.
All right.
No, it's good to keep building. And then I can keep going here. Parapsychologists, some other ones I would mention. Of course, Lloyd Auerbach. I have one of his
I
books
didn't put
listed
him
too.
on
It's
my
one that,
list because I knew you would have him.
yeah, his book from 19, I think it was 85, 86. I have it listed here. It was one of the main things that got me interested in the field. So back in the day, it really had an impact on me. So I listed Lloyd. As far as other parapsychologists, Andrew Nichols, Barry Colvin, Barry Taff. Some of these people had Eleanor Gaynor. She did the work with Barry Taff on the case that was the inspiration for The Entity
Yep.
from UCLA. They did a lot of work out there.
I also had the
And
great honor of interviewing Mr. Dr. Barry Tapp as well. So that was
yeah,
yeah,
he's been around for quite a while.
yeah, yep,
He's done some good work.
yeah.
So going on with a little more modern, I think, what did Jen put? Sam Parnia. Yeah, he's a good
Hmm.
one. If you're interested in near-death experiences, he's doing some pretty good research trying to figure out what's going on with that. And does consciousness continue after your heart stops and brain activity stops? So that's a good
Well,
one.
well, we
Um,
don't want people's brain activity and hearts and stuff.
well, that's how we get ghosts and hauntings, we
Yeah,
think.
I know.
Um, Barry Colvin, I just wanted to note, not many people would maybe recognize that name, but he was really instrumental in a study not too long ago where he looked at anomalous knocking sounds. So trying to put some sound and analytical work into trying to identify the characteristics of these sounds. And he actually came up with some things that showed that they're quite a bit different than what you would hear if it was just a normal, somebody rapping on the wall or pounding on something. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of a lesser known one. Um, let's see if we want to get really recent.
Hmm.
Not a parapsychologist, but a neuroscientist, Jason Braithwaite.
Mm.
He was associated with the ASSAP, the group in England, the Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena. He got his PhD, does a lot of research in neuroscience right now. And he did a ton of work on looking at magnetic fields using the Fluxgate magnetometers, the MAD system, the magnetic anomaly detection system. And he was one of the first ones to really take a hard look at what Persinger was doing in his lab with those space and temporal and spatial varying magnetic fields that he was using on the God helmet that Matt described. And Braithwaite actually went to these haunted locations, and he was able to detect those type of fields that are very similar to what Persinger was creating in his lab, where people would have experiences. And Braithwaite was able to detect them at some locations where people reported things as well. Moving along, I'll do a couple more, and then I'll turn it back over to Matt. Let's see. Jen said Dr. Carolyn Watt at the University of Edinburgh. Yep, she was on my list. She's actually one of the authors of one of the main parapsychology textbooks. Also going down, Vic Tandy. He's the one who did the work on infrasound that
Mm,
showed that some reports of anomalous phenomena could be due to infrasound. Let's see what else we got here. Vic, yeah, I got Vic. Dave Wood, he was another one that was associated with the American or the Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena in England. And then two that's I don't think a lot of people have heard of would be Rince Lange and James Haran. They've done a lot looking at contextual cues, belief. They also did some work with Tim Hart. Tim Hart, if people know him, he's done a lot of work with the MESA system, the multi-energy sensor array system, one of the original data logging systems. So yeah, those are a couple more on my list. So I'll turn it back over to Matt.
all right. Well, we listed a whole bunch of people. Some of our lists were very similar, and some, I had different. Um, what I want to get into next, Dave, is which because we could probably take up the whole rest of the show with this, but um, there's a lot of different scientific journals and different publications out there. But what I'm most interested in is how can people, um, get their hands on these scientific journals and publications that have really good data that they can read and study, and how can they get their hands on this stuff? Like where the the references, where are they located, are they online, and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways to go about that. You can go to the Society of Psychical Research, and they have their journal listed there. A lot of these are going to be pay sites. You have to pay to get the journal.
Right.
The American Society of Psychical Research, go to their website. The Society for Scientific Exploration has the Journal of Scientific Exploration. The Parapsychological Association, go to their website. You can have access to some of their journal articles. Um, the one I always tell people to go to if you really want to pay and have access to a bunch of different articles, there's a website called Lexion, Lexscien, and they are really a clearinghouse and a place that just stores all of the parapsychological journals and articles. So for a certain fee, you can join that and you have access to look through and read those articles. And then for another small amount, you can select certain, clips out of those whatever journal, and you can download it and have it for yourself. So
Hmm.
that's one site. The other one is Google Scholar. Just go and do Google Scholar, type in a topic, and it'll pull up whatever's been published, both academic and maybe some other papers as well. If you don't want to pay, you might be able to find some on academia. That's one, or ResearchGate. A lot of authors will put their stuff up there, and if it's not on their personal site, you can submit a request to have them send you the article that you're interested in. You can also go to some of the authors' sites, like Dr. Carolyn Watts, or Dr. Carolyn Watt, not Watts, or Chris French, Jason Braithwaite. A lot of them have websites at the universities that they teach at, and some of them have the journal articles that they've written. The other one is you can type in Google Dean Radin Publications, and he's got a whole bunch of different journal articles listed on different topics in parapsychology. There's also some apparitions and hauntings and poltergeist stuff as well. And you can have those, you can have access to those for free. So that's just a couple of ideas of where to go to get that information.
Right, right. And also, the Ryan Institute also has links to some of their articles and publications that they've done through the scientific journal that they've published in as well. So they have a website as well. So you can easily look up the JB Ryan Institute. I believe it's under the same name. as far as Ryan, or it could be under Ryan Institute. I think I'm not sure if they abbreviated it now, but you could get their information that way too. Dr. Barry Taff also has a lot of publications as well. He's got some journals and books about some of the cases that he's worked on. He was a lot into PK too. With some of the cases he worked on, he was a kind of one of those believers that possibly a lot of poltergeist activity had a lot to do with PK stuff. One of the famous cases that he worked on, like you mentioned, Dave, that inspired the movie The Entity. He that's where he believed that the woman was manifesting, things out of stress and whatnot. So, and she was causing a lot of the manifestations on her own. But he's got some really interesting readings on his website, and he has a website as well. So you can just look up Dr. Barry Taff, which is Taff is how you spell his name. But he's an interesting fellow. He's got some really interesting ideas out there. He's got some crazy ideas out there. He just check him out. That's all I can suggest. And whatnot. So, wow, we crammed a lot in just a half hour already.
Yeah, it's a lot of information, but if you go out there and search it, you can find it.
Yeah,
And a lot of times if you come across a journal article and you're just having a really hard time finding it, one of the tricks you can do is go to Google and type in the actual title of the article and then put PDF afterwards. And sometimes it allows you to kind of sneak in and into somewhere you may not normally have access to because the PDF, the restrictions aren't as they are going through the main website. So that's one other trick I found. But again, Google Scholar's great, and that Lexion, Lexscin, is really good. That just provides you with a whole bunch of the main parapsychology journals, academic peer-reviewed ones right there. And it does cost money, but it's worth it if you really want to get in and do some reading and learn something. The one thing that always amazes me is people dump hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on equipment. And a lot of it is, kind of not great equipment. And you could spend just a fraction of that and really expand your knowledge of the field.
yeah, sure. Um, I was gonna, yeah, we have some storms in the area, and I don't know, for some reason my video is getting choppy, so it may affect our connection. Because the audio cut in and out a little bit. So apologies to that to our listeners and viewers. But if you guys have a hard time listening, it's not our fault. There are storms in the area. YouTube did have an outage, so that's not our fault. But so continuing right along, I pretty much that's my list. I mean, I was telling Dave, I was in Connecticut all day Saturday, so I was trying to do my homework as best I could in just a short time. But I think I hit some pretty good people on my list. I'm sure Dave has a huge list, but what I really like to do, Dave, is which I'm sure you could probably recommend a lot. What books would you recommend for people that could really inspire people to learn more about uh what we do?
Yeah, and I know my audio is cutting out, and I noticed the video is cutting out here, so I don't on the YouTube channel. So I don't know if we're having more problems with YouTube or what.
Yeah,
Anyway, we'll keep going, try to trudge through it.
yeah.
Here's a couple books that I would recommend. Phantasms of the Living. That's more of a series of journal articles by Edmund Gurney from 1886. Um, Apparitions by Tyrrell. It was published in 42 and republished in 73. Apparitions by Green and McCreary, 1975. Apparitions. I'm gonna skip the journal articles for now. I'll get back to those.
Okay.
Guidance Notes for Investigators of Spontaneous Cases. That's a new one that's put out by Steve Parsons of the Society of Psychical Research. That came out in 2018. That to me is just the bare basics of how to investigate spontaneous cases, which is what most parapsychologists and researchers call ghosts and hauntings. Poltergeists. Can we explain the poltergeist? 1979, Gould and Cornell with Poltergeist. And then Can We Explain the Poltergeist by Owen, 1964. The Poltergeist Experience, 1979 by Scott Rogo. The Poltergeist, William Roll,
Mhm.
1972. And then Hauntings and Apparitions, Mackenzie, that's a classic from 1982. At the Hour of Death, the third edition, Osis and Haraldson, 1997, I think, is when the newest one came out. Human Personality and Its Survival After Bodily Death. I mentioned Lloyd's book from 1986, ESP Hauntings and Poltergeists, A Parapsychologist's Handbook. Let's see, Hauntings and Apparitions by McKinsey. An Introduction to Parapsychology. To me, that's a great one. That's in its fifth
Nice.
edition now by Dr. Carolyn Watt and Harvey J. Irwin, 2007. And then another one I think is really fantastic, and everybody should have this if you're interested in the field, is Hauntings and Poltergeists, a Multidisciplinary Perspectives by Haran and Lang. They were the editors. That was in 2001. Parapsychology, a handbook for the 21st century. That came out in 2015, which was the newer edition of the Handbook of Parapsychology by Woolman in 1977. And let me see, I'm just taking a look at my list here to see if I missed any major books, because I'm sure the next thing we're going to want to talk about might be articles. Investigating Ghosts, The Scientific Search for Spirits, Ben Radford, 2017. That's a good book if you want to, have a critical and skeptical evaluation of cases. I would highly recommend that one. And then the Deborah Blum book that Jen mentioned, Deborah, in the chat. Actually, we had her come down. She's a professor and a journalist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and she came down and spoke at one of our conferences, and couldn't be a nicer lady. She was great. So Ghost Hunters, William James, and the Search for Scientific Proof of Life After Death in 2006 is when that one came out. And then the last one I'll list for now, Surviving Death, a Journalist Investigates Evidence for an Afterlife by Leslie Keene in 2017. So those are a couple books
Yeah.
for you there.
Yeah. Even I'm interested in possibly reading the Carolyn Watt book with the Introduction to Parapsychology myself.
Yeah, that's a great book. It's a college, undergraduate, maybe beginning graduate level type text on the field of parapsychology, and it's great. I took her class. She did an online version of her parapsychology introduction to parapsychology class. I took that a couple years ago, and she used that textbook along with journal articles and interviews, and solid
Yeah.
overview of the field and what parapsychology entails, how it came about, what it covers, how what the current state of the field is. So I'd
Which
highly recommend the book and her class as well. You can just do it
yeah.
online, and it's
Which is
definitely worth the money.
yeah, and the current state of the field, which is a mess right now.
Yep.
Yep. But anyway, no, that was a great list. I think we listed a bunch of great key players. These are some of the people actually I think would be great on our show.
Yeah. They're busy people.
I know they're busy people. Well, not the ones that they're not around anymore. Some of them are not here.
And get an EVP of them, huh?
But yeah, it would be great if we could get some of these people, especially Lloyd Auerbach. I'm a big fan of his work, so we could try to get him on our show. That'd be great. But
Yep.
yeah, so
Good deal.
yeah,
All right. So do you have any other books or anything, Matt?
no. Again, your list outbeats mine. I didn't get much chance to really grow my information there. I was in Connecticut all day Saturday, and I was just on the road. Traffic on 95 is just like hell. You know.
It's always hell out there.
Um, yeah, I know. Yeah, my area just doesn't make traveling fun. Especially the bridges and all that traffic. Anyway, well, you
Well,
did mention you have information about scientific journals.
Yep, I have.
Journals are much different from books. Journals are like, I guess, the shortened version of books.
Yeah, they're a little more complicated sometimes. Some of these articles I'll list are more scientific, more data driven. Other ones are more case studies and reviews. So
Okay,
they can be both. They can
okay,
be both.
but they can also be
So
very
some of the
useful.
ones they're real useful, and like I've said many times, I'm always amazed that there isn't just at least a general working knowledge um, to understand this or to where the literature is and what it is. So
Right.
I'm going to cover a couple of these and then maybe I'll toss it to Matt for comments or questions and then I can keep going because I do have a good list of them. And I think eventually what I'll do is I'll type these up and then post them on our YouTube and Facebook page
Yeah, that'd
so
be
people
great.
can have a
Yeah.
list of them, have a
Have,
bibliography to work off of
yeah.
because it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. The first one is Census of Hallucinations in 1894. That was in the journal The Proceedings of the Society of Psychical Research. I think it's volume 10, and it's about 400 pages, just that one journal and that article. It's huge, but it reviews all the original work and all the questionnaires and the responses in the survey that the Society of Psychical Research did, looking for people to report spontaneous cases. And then they went back and did follow up and looked for collaborating stories and reports. So it's one of the classics, and it's one of the ones that people really go back and dig into. Let's see. Apparitions of the Dead analysis of a new collection of 350 reports, and that was in research in parapsychology. 1994, I believe. It could be 91. I think it's 94, but it might be 91. Let's see. Let me flip the page here. This is a good one. Characteristics of hauntings with and without apparitions.
Mm.
1995, the Journal of the Society of Psychical Research, volume 60, pages 385 to 397. That one is really interesting because not all hauntings have apparitions associated with them. And they
No,
try
that's
to get
correct.
at, is there a difference between a haunting and an apparition? Is there overlap? What that can be? Yeah, it's a good article. One that I always go back to. It's really old, but it's useful. 6 Theories of Apparitions from
Wow.
1956. And
Yeah.
that was, again, the Proceedings of the Society of Psychical Research, volume 50, 100, page 153 to 239. And then the last one I'll mention at the moment, and I can turn it to Matt for questions or whatever we want to discuss because I have a bunch more. The contribution of apparitions to the evidence for survival. So this was the Journal of the American Society of Psychical Research, volume 76, pages 341 to 358. And it really takes a hard look at, are apparitions and ghosts really a good way to study and see if there's survival of life after death? So that's my first ones. I do have a couple more, and
Yeah.
I'll be glad to keep
That's
going, but I'll turn it over to Matt for a
that
minute.
that actually could turn into a great question because is it is it a great way to study the afterlife? Because you know we can't prove anything with the current equipment we're using or with the current methods that we're using. Um, with the experiments we're currently using in the field, we really we haven't gotten any conclusions as to what apparitions are, as to what ghosts are. Are there a difference between a ghost or an apparition? And do we have what's out there enough to say that there is an afterlife? You know what I mean? So like if you take, I mean, it's kind of a stretch, but I'm just saying, like, dating all the way back to the early 1800s to the data that we have now, you know, it's kind of hard to come up with something. You know what I mean?
Yep, yep.
It's a
No,
great
it's true. Um,
it's a great question.
yep. All right. Any others?
Not no. I'm good for now. I'm
Okay. Well, I can keep going if you want. I got a whole bunch of the other ones, obviously. I think some people make fun of me when I have so many damn journal articles.
Well, we have a big supporter in the chat room. We have Jen. No, she said this episode
Yeah,
seems
and I
to
think
be just listing papers,
comment
but
this.
not detailing each of the cases. Hard to keep track of. Just her personal opinion. Okay, so
Yeah,
uh,
that's fine. I think what we're trying to do is a list of papers, books, and people at this point.
right,
And because these are journal articles, it's really hard to talk about each one. It's an hour episode in itself. So what I would
right,
encourage people to do is to take this list, which I will type up, and put it on our YouTube page and our Facebook page, and people could dig into some of these because most of these are available. You can go and read them yourself, and dig into them. And then, maybe as Matt said, we could at some point have an episode where we dig into one or two of these. That is something that would be worth doing. But,
yeah,
in an hour, it's almost, I mean, some of these are 30, 40, 50 pages long. So I'm just trying to give a list, an overview of what's available out there. I think one of the things that's pretty interesting is a lot of people don't even know there's journal articles
right,
on these topics and
right,
in this field,
yeah,
actual peer-reviewed journal articles. So, no, I think it's a great suggestion, and I think it'd be a fun show to really dig in and talk about some of these journals and these articles. I think it would be great. So,
yeah.
yeah, I might, maybe to her point, maybe if we get done and we got a couple of minutes, I can grab a couple key ones and just talk about some of the points in them if we have time.
Yeah.
So, all right,
Yeah, I mean,
let's see
we
what
have
else.
20 minutes, but, again, if any I just wanna throw out there, Dave, real quick, because sometimes people tune into us, like, last minute. They catch, like, the last few minutes of our show. For
Mhm.
those who are just tuning into our episode, Dave and I are going over a list of, key players and a list of literature that have impacted the paranormal community and the paranormal field over the decades. Who are the key players and some of the literature that has impacted the paranormal field over the decades. And some of these books, some of the literature, and these people date back as far as the early 1800s. People just rely on TV too much. You know,
Mhm.
the supernatural and the paranormal goes way before even TV was invented. you know,
Yep.
so go back, read your books. There's a lot of literature available, and that's what me and Dave are touching up, a lot on this episode. We're sharing bits and pieces of information, how you can get access to this stuff. There is stuff available at your hands and at your fingertips. It's easy, some you may have to pay for, some of it may be free. Some people have their own websites that you can access, and they have links on their website. And is a super nice guy that's gonna take his free time and post a whole list on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, and put either a link or a list together, somewhere where people can look over, what we went over during this episode.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to do a couple more. Two of my favorites that I go back on and read every so often: quantitative investigation of a reported haunting using several detection techniques by Mayer and Hansen. Uh, that is in the Journal of the American Society of Psychical Research, 1992, volume 86. And the other one that goes along with that is a quantitative investigation of a haunted castle in New Jersey,
Mm,
again by Mayer and Hansen, same journal, and volume 89, 1995. What
I love haunted castles. No, looks like we lost Dave's audio. As soon as it comes back in, I can try to finish listening to what he was last saying. Yeah, again, apologies. YouTube has an outage. It could be affecting our show here, so we're doing the best we can trying to uh, get through this. So um, if anybody can't hear us at all, please let us know. Again, our email is fifth dimension radio show at gmail.com. or hit, make a comment on the chat room next to the live video feed. Um, Dave, you still with us? No, looks like we lost Dave. Huh. All right, I'm going to try to get him back as best I can. So again, those who are joining us late, we're going over key players and literature that has impacted the paranormal community over the last few decades. Um, yeah, Dave just hit me up right now. Yeah, he he lost everything, and now they, yeah. So again, apologies, guys. There's some problems with YouTube, and we're just trying to struggle through it. But if we missed anybody on our list, please feel free to comment in the episode uh, on our YouTube channel. Uh, you could comment under the video. Let us know if we missed anybody, or if we didn't miss anybody. If you like who we listed as far as key players and literature that has impacted the paranormal community, please feel free to comment. Um, as I'm just trying to get Dave back in. Um, just communicating with Dave right now, trying to do the best we can to get him back. We got about 15 minutes left of the show, so hopefully we get him back in with no issues. For those who do podcasts and radio over the internet, this is out of our control. We do the best we can with what we got. Um, so anyway, hope you guys, like the show. Whether you like the show or you hate the show, we know there's haters out there, but if you love the show, we welcome constructive criticism. We welcome constructive criticism. And if you'd like to let us know how you like the show, if you like the topics that we talk about on the fifth dimension, our email is fifth dimension radio show at gmail.com. You can also look us up on Facebook. It's the Fifth Dimension Live Video Podcast on Facebook, and also the Fifth Dimension Live Video Podcast on YouTube is how you look us up for our YouTube channel. Please feel free to let us know how the video and audio quality of the show is. It may be different for everybody. If your internet speed isn't to par, it's not our end. It could be your end. It could be your router. You don't know. Just refresh the page. But let us know how we're doing. Um, so try to get Dave back in. All right. So we're trying our best to get Dave back on. Um, I understand Jen's point of view. Yeah, it's a little hard to you know, cite things and to what we're referring to. In general, we're just coming up with a list of key players and literature that has impacted, and I mean impacted. I mean with their study, what they wrote about, uh, things that they were notable for that really had an impact in the paranormal community and in the paranormal field. So, yeah, so I'm just waiting for Dave to get back in the chat room. Um, just waiting for him. I sent another invite to him, so hopefully he comes back. So it's kind of feels weird to talk to yourself when there's no one else here. So, yeah, so again, if we missed anybody, if you don't like our list, feel free to insert a comment, to anybody we may have missed as far as a key player. And I'm not talking, you know, paranormal TV celebs or anybody like that. I'm talking about real research that has impacted the paranormal community. Not TV stuff, not Ghost Adventures, not Zach Bagans, not Jason Hawes, not Haunted Collector, nobody like that. that's all for entertainment. That's TV. Okay, so just trying to get Dave back on the show. See, all right. So unfortunately, he lost power or lost his internet access, so can't get him back on the show. So I think we're gonna end the show a little early. So apologies again. Out of our hands. Sometimes technical issues happen. YouTube had an outage, and we're gonna have a much better show next time. So I want to thank everybody for those who did tune in tonight. I want to thank Jennifer Schumacher. That's actually Dave's wife. She was in the chat room, and she inserted some really great other people, other key players in our chat room. So check that out. You can always look back and read what you missed. You can always catch our show again even though you missed it live, it'll be on our YouTube channel. So you can always watch it again later on. All right, so that's not a problem. So our show will always be there. I want to thank everybody for listening to our show, and again, send us an email if you'd like to be a guest on our show. Hit me up, fifth dimension, fifth dimension radio show at gmail.com, and we'll catch everybody on our next show. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.